Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Nina, and I have made more than one video on this channel about how to overcome resentment once we are experiencing it. But today I wanted to talk about some habits we may have that greatly contribute to us becoming bitter and resentful. And I know it's sometimes hard to admit to ourselves when we are feeling this way, but it happens to the best of us, and it's so important that we address it once we identify it, because it can lead to so many negative consequences to our mental and physical health, and of course to our relationships. So let's go ahead and jump right in and talk about some of the mental and emotional habits we may be unknowingly engaging in that could be leading us to experience bitterness and resentment a lot more frequently than we need to be. The first one is holding on to grudges and refusing to forgive others. And there can be many different reasons why we may feel driven to do this. We may feel like they've wronged us, or that we need to get even or punish them in some way for hurting us. Or we may feel like letting go of the grudge is the same as approving their behavior, or it leaves us open to getting hurt by them again. So on paper, it really does make sense why we might struggle with this. But in reality, when we hold on to grudges, we are essentially just poisoning ourselves with negative emotions. So even though deep down we really may think that all we want to do is punish that person, in reality we are just punishing ourselves, which makes it extremely difficult for us to move on and have a happy life again. And as much as we want to avoid it or feel like we can't, forgiveness really is one of the most powerful tools we have for overcoming bitterness. Number 2 is comparing ourselves to others. Now this one is more challenging than ever because we are now in the age of social media, and it is so easy to slip into comparing ourselves and judging ourselves to other people when we are constantly seeing what everyone else is doing. But when we do this, we're just setting ourselves up for suffering and disappointment, because we can always find someone who seemingly is doing better than us, who we perceive to be more happy or talented or successful. And of course that leads to feelings of bitterness. But in reality, it really doesn't matter how or what anyone else is doing, because their journey is not ours. And there's no way for us to even tell if what they're putting out there is even real. In fact, most of the time we are comparing our everyday lives with someone else's highlight reel, and we are completely blind to all of the struggles that they are going through. So that's something that we really do have to keep in mind. Number 3 is focusing on the negative. When we do this, it is so easy to become bitter, and unfortunately as humans we do have a negativity bias. We are literally wired to pay more attention to negative information because our brain is constantly looking around for any perceived danger, for anything that could be a threat, even in completely non-threatening situations, especially if we've had a lot of negative experiences in our life. We can start to learn to expect the worst and even interpret very neutral experiences as being negative. Also, negative emotions like fear, anger, and sadness are more intense and more memorable than positive emotions. So we're more likely to dwell on them and to remember them more vividly. And if we don't have awareness of this and start to actively try to change our mental habits, we're going to start to see the world as a very dark and hopeless place, which will begin to make us more and more bitter. Number 4 is not communicating our needs. When we fail to do this, oftentimes people have absolutely no idea what we want or need. Yet many times we expect people to magically have this knowledge, or we feel like if they really knew us or they really loved us, that it would be obvious, even though this is not usually the case. But when they don't respond to our needs because of this lack of knowledge, we can feel unheard or unseen, or we can feel like we're not being respected, or that we're not getting what we deserve. So it's so important that when we realize that we are feeling this way, that we sit down and reflect on whether or not we've been effectively communicating our needs. And if not, we need to start opening up and sharing our needs if we are ever going to be able to overcome bitterness. And number 5 is blaming others and playing the victim. In other words, not taking responsibility for our happiness or our unhappiness. When we play the victim, we are giving up control over our lives. What we're really saying is that we're not responsible for our happiness and that we are powerless to change our circumstances. And when we start to think this way, we get into the habit of blaming other people for our problems, which of course makes us feel angry and bitter, and unfortunately also deeply harms the relationship itself. But the good news is, once we recognize that we are struggling with bitterness and resentment, there are many powerful things that we can do to overcome it. And it all starts with really becoming aware of what is making us bitter in the first place, because we're not going to be able to address it unless we really know where it is coming from. So this is where we want to start. Something else that we can start to do is to learn to focus on the positive aspects of our life, because they are there. A lot of times we just can't see them because we are focusing so much on the negative. And something that we can do to help this is to get into the practice of sitting down and creating a daily gratitude list, where we think about all the things in our life that truly make us happy, the things that we are really thankful for, and to try to focus on those things. And once we shift that perspective, we start to notice that bitterness does tend to naturally dissipate. As I said earlier, we can also start to learn to communicate our needs more effectively. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but with practice, this is something that we can become very successful at. A lot of times we've been taught in our childhood or just throughout our life that we shouldn't communicate our needs, that we're being a better person, a more giving person, if we ignore our needs and put everyone else in front of us. But that never really works out. In everybody's life, they do need their needs met. So it is something that we have to communicate, because others don't know until we tell them. So that's something that we want to start working on as well. And finally, we can start to work on forgiving the people that hurt us. And remember that forgiveness does not mean that we are forgetting what happened or that we are condoning the behavior in any way. All it means is that we are taking the weight off of ourselves. We are giving ourselves the gift of removing the bitterness and the anger so that we can move on and live a happy life. And remember, if you are finding this all too overwhelming to handle on your own, you can absolutely reach out to a counselor, to a therapist, to a family member or a friend, or join a support group either online or in person. There are many available, because this is something that so many people deal with. So you're going to find a lot of people that can relate to this struggle and that can help you through it. So as always, I truly hope that you found this video to be helpful and insightful. If you did, please like it, share it, definitely become a subscriber if you aren't one already. I would absolutely love it if you stayed connected. Also, I'm going to go ahead and drop a couple more videos about healing resentment in the description box below in case you feel like you need a little further support. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I hope the rest of your day is extraordinary.